Right then, now in this lecture, what I want to show you how to do is use the color balance adjustment layers. All right, now adjustment layers are these amazing things you learned about in a previous module. All right, but right now what I want to do is I want to work with the color balance adjustment layer. And what I want to do is I want you to take a look at this image that I have on screen here. And as far as I'm concerned, there's a little bit too much magenta-ish stuff going on in the stalks of the plant. All right, so what I want to do is I want to add some yellows and greens to this. And I'm going to use an adjustment layer to do that. Now, before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a selection of the purple flower area here so that my adjustment is not going to affect the purple flower, but more it's going to affect everything else. So rather than watch me make the selection, I have gone and created one in advance called purple flower. All right, so when I load this up, all right, I have the purple flower going on. All right, and that's the thing that's highlighted. So anything I do will affect inside the marching ants, which would be the purple flower. All right, but what I want is I want the opposite of that. There's two ways to go about doing that. One is I can come under the select menu and choose inverse, and now I have everything but the purple flowers selected. You can see the marching ants now are going all around the edge and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to deselect that because I'm going to show you how you can actually get this to come in when you first choose. All right, so here we go. I've got my purple flower thing there. Just click on the invert button right there. When it comes in, it's actually inverted. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a color balance adjustment layer. So there's a number of ways to do it. I'm going to come under the layer menu. I'm going to choose new adjustment layer, and I'm going to come down here and choose color balance. All right, in a minute we're going to actually do a HueSaturation adjustment, and then we're going to be able to compare the differences. All right, so here we go, color balance. And this is to affect my yellows and greens. So I'm going to call it yellows and greens. All right, so now there's my selection. All right, we know that white reveals and black conceals. So the adjustment I make will be revealed in the white areas, which is everything but the flower. All right, over here in the properties panel for the color balance adjustment thing, we have cyans to reds, right, the opposites. So as far as color correction is concerned, the opposite of red is cyan, the opposite of magenta is green, and the opposite of yellow is blue. Yellow and blue, green and magenta. Where have we seen that before? Well, if you've done any work with Camera Raw, you'll know that the yellows to blues, or the blues to yellows, whichever way you want to look at it, is our temperature slider, and our tint is the greens to magentas. Regardless, I just thought I'd throw that in. Not that it has any bearing. All right. So as a default, Photoshop sets the tone area that we're going to initially work with to the mid-tones. And that's generally where the majority of the information is that we want to work on and adjust in our images. All right. But we could also go into the shadows, and we can also go into the highlights. But let's start off with the mid-tones, because that's where we're going to see the most of any adjustment that we're going to make. So what I'm thinking is in the mid-tones, let's see. See if I go this far, we're getting too much green and we're not getting enough yellow, and then we need to come back and, okay. I'm just fooling around here, guys, all right? Let's move this back down a little bit and just give it +4. All right? Now, let's come over here and give the green values, and you know that I've already tested this out, so it's going to work out well. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to 22. All right, what I originally did is I had it like this, all right, and I increased my greens, and then I increased my yellows by putting a negative value in here, and I just went to about, let's just do this, -12. All right, and I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, I've got yellows in there, I've got greens in there. Well, you know, maybe I should just give it a touch, all right, of a little bit of the thing back into that. Okay, so now I've got the reds kind of coming in a little bit, but I've taken out what I consider to be the majority of the magentas that I didn't like in there. And all I have to do now is just turn the eyeball on and off, and you can see that that's a drastic difference. All right, so I'm liking, that's the original. I'm liking this a little bit more. I'm not finished with it yet, but I'm liking it a little bit more. So now, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and affect the highlights. That would be all the highlight stuff that's not part of the purple. So let's go in there. Now, take a look at the numbers I'm using, 4, 22, and -12. Now, something I've learned over the years is that if you went in and put those same values in the highlights, it would be way too much. All right, so generally as a starting point, what I do is I put in half. When I go into the shadows or the highlights, I generally start off with half, and then if it needs to go any further after that, then I will go and make more adjustments. So that was 4 before, now it's 2. That was 22, I'm going to make that 11. And this was -12, so I'm going to put in -6. And now I'm going to hit that again to see, and it's even more obvious what we've got going on. And I'm going to go into the shadows, and I'm going to apply the same values. 2, half of what we had in the midtones, 11, half of what we had in the midtones, and -6, half of what we had in the midtones. So now I'm going to come over here and click on this, and then this is my adjusted. So I'm liking that quite a bit. All right. Don't forget, I've got the opacity slider here that I could, slide things down, and I generally do that as well. All right. So what I do is I make my adjustments, and sometimes I do what's known as going to an extreme, and then I retreat to a usable end result. So at that point here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the opacity to 66%. All right. There you go. So now I've got 66% of that adjustment. It's got the adjustment, just not quite as strong as what the sliders had put out. All right. If I find that when I'm finished this and I'm going to print or something like that, and the results are not what I'm looking for, I can always come back and increase or decrease the opacity. All right. So that is the first adjustment layer that I'm working on. So I'm just going to click over here to deselect and get the heck out of them and all that kind of stuff. And now what I need to do is, well, whatever, I'm back here again, aren't I? I'm going to come down at the bottom here, and I'm going to choose another color balance. And this color balance I'm going to name, what am I going to call this? Purples and blues, if I can spell properly. All right, purples and blues. So now I want to work on the purplish bluish stuff in here. Well, we already have the selection or the mask in here, so why don't I just take the mask, option drag up to this guy, release. Photoshop is going to say, do I want to replace the blank layer mask with the one that actually has a selection on it? And I'm going to say yes. Now, this is the same as that, and if I make an adjustment, I'm going to affect what I just did. So what I need to do is I need to reverse this. All right. Photoshop looks at our masks as they're black and white images. So all I have to do is make sure that that is selected and go under the Image Adjustment menu and come down here and choose to invert. I want to invert this, so whatever is white goes black, whatever is black goes white, and whatever shades of gray are there, they're going to flip as well. So I'm just going to do that. This is my mask. Beautiful. All right, I've already got one. It's here. Now I've got this here. All right, so this is an opposite. White reveals, black conceals. White reveals. I want to add some zippy-dod do-day stuff to the purple stuff. All right, so I'm going to come over here and click on the color balance thing as opposed to on the mask. All right, and now what I want to do is I want to just adjust certain things. So let's see, what if I came in here, and you know that this is, I don't want to add red in there, I want to get more of this purpley stuff or blue stuff coming in. So what if I come into about that? All right, and then what if I were to take this stuff and go away from green, and so you see what I'm saying? I'm going opposite of whatever the other stuff is. So I'm just going to come in here, and you can see that I can change this. And ooh, sexy. All right. So I'm going to take this down to about -12, 13. and then I'm going to add some blue into there. All right, adding blue. All right, but I want to be careful about how much blue I add, so I'm just going to add about that. So let's come in here and see. All right, is that looking good? Yeah, that's looking good. How about this one? This one here needs about that much, and then I'm just going to take one out of each one of these guys. Oops, did I just add something? There you go. All right, 14, and I'm going to come down into this one here, and I'm just going to take that down to -12, and I got that. So let's just click on this to see. All right, so that's a nice little adjustment. All right, I mean, you don't want to go crazy with this stuff, but there's a nice little adjustment going on with that. In this case, I'm not going to go into the shadows, and I'm not going to go into the highlights. I'm just going to let the midtones ride on this stuff. Okay, so right now I've got, what I think is not a bad adjustment to my image. What I want to do is I want to see what the image looked like before and then with these adjustments. And I can do that very easily. I don't want to go in and turn off these eyeballs because I do one and then the other and I see, a little bit of this and that. But what I can do is if I hold down the Option or Alt key on the PC and click on an eyeball, I can turn all the other guys off. And then if I Option click on that eyeball again, I can turn them all back on again. So watch this. I'm just going to do this. And there is the before image. And there's the after. Before and after. Before and after. Absolutely. Really, really nice. I think, what else would be really, really nice if we did a mid-tone contrast, clarity kind of a thing. So maybe we'll just over-sharpen it and play around with it. I don't know. But at this point, I'm kind of happy with this. But what I want to do is I want to turn the eyeball of this guy off. And I'm going to come down and create a HueSaturation adjustment layer. All right. Again, I only want to work in the purples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this mask up to here. And I'm going to do that by holding down the Option key, clicking on the mask I want to copy to the mask I want to replace. And do that, and you're going to get this. I leave this on only for training purposes, but generally what I'd end up doing is turning that off because I find this to be totally annoying as I'm going through my workflow. All right, so there we go. Because I have the mask selected, the mask icon over here is selected. If I click on the HueSaturation adjustment layer icon over here, then I'm back over in the HueSaturation adjustment stuff. All right, this is quite an interesting little box that we can work with. We have the master slider up here where we can actually just take whatever was this hue and move it over to that hue. So I can actually come in here and move things around and set them up by that, but it's not doing exactly what I was looking for. But we can have, nondescript, hide, chameleon kind of things over into this stuff and way over down into, ooh, cool, interesting. I'm going to put that back at 0. All right, now that's under the master. In other words, we're switching stuff, so everything's sliding all over the place. Let's take a look at the stocks as I move this around, because I was looking over at the purples when I was actually doing this, but you can see that, oh, wow, you see we're not getting anything in the stocks, are we? Why? Because I have the layer mask on there. Let me just disable that by holding the Shift key and clicking on this, and then coming over to this guy. And if I start moving this around, you can see what I'm talking about. That's what I wanted to show you. Wow, we could really make some interesting flowers in this thing with a variety of different layer masks. That would be a neat project. All right, so now I'm going to enable this again by coming back over to here, clicking on this thing. And what I want to show you is we can come down here and we can choose a specific color to work on. And I'm going to choose the blues. So there we go. So now inside this dialog box at this point in time, what we have down here, the two rainbow sliders thing, is the color wheel and the color wheel. All right. And as I move the slider left or right based on the blues, then the bottom slider is going to move and show us what we had before and what we have now. All right. So now you would think that it's just going to sort of abruptly stop at that. Well, not really. All right, this light gray area here is the definite blue part of the color wheel. This area from here to there is a transitional spread from very, very blue, dark blue, blue to an aqua, and it's going to fade in a transition. And the same thing over to the magentas, it's going to fade as a transition. All right, so what I can do now is just move that slider this way and that way to see what we can end up with. All right, so maybe I'm just going to increase the saturation. maybe I'm going to do this and take it over the blues. No, I'm going to leave it kind of there, all right, with that, but I can actually increase. Okay, nobody has electric flowers like that, all right, but what I am going to do is just increase the saturation up to maybe 20, and I can turn that on and off, and I can say, wow, that's not a bad adjustment as well. All right, and maybe I'll just bring it up a little bit more. I'm not 100% sure. All right, so anyways, there we go. We've made some color adjustments. I'm showing you how the different dialog boxes work, and we can also come into some of these presets, and we can say stronger saturation, more of a yellow boost. These are presets that come with the application, but you can see that I've made my own preset that's just more redder, whatever. Great grammar. Thanks, John. All right. Anyways, so that's basically what the HueSaturation dialog box is all about and how it can be used. And the other options are with the color balance. And I can turn that on and turn that off and see whether or not we're getting something similar. Now, it'd be really nice to be able to compare the two, but I think you get the idea. You can do a color balance, color adjustment, or you can use the saturation slider in the HueSaturation to make an adjustment based on just that color, as I did with this. All right, so in the next movie, we're going to move on to using photo filters for color correction.